Hey guys, it's me, Dr. B, or Vanessa. I am here today to talk a little bit about my July 2023 wrap-up. So I know, again, this is a little late. I'm filming this towards the end of August, but you know what I say, it's always better late than never. So in the month of August, I read 20 books. I think I had a very exciting month because this is the most books I've read ever in a month, and I think part of that was due to there being 2 readathons going on that I participated in. There were tons of readathons going on in July, but I participated in 2. So one of them lasted the entire month. I participated in the Hunger Games readathon, and I also participated in Summerween. So Summerween was only a week long, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time in both. The Hunger Games readathon was super cool because there were many prompts that you could do, and you could do them as many times as you wanted to get the points for your team. I was on District 1, which was luxury goods. We did not win, despite all of the reading that we did. But it was a fun event because it did get me to read a lot more, and I was trying to get a lot of points for our team. Let's get into the books that I read this month. I'll try to clarify if it was a Summerween book that I read, but all of the books that I read for July counted towards the Hunger Games readathon. Alright, so the first book that I read this month is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, and this is the follow-up book to Ninth House, and I had a little bit of trouble understanding Ninth House. I had to write, I wrote stuff in my book that said who was what role and what was going on, but this book I kind of understood a little bit more of who everybody was, and it just essentially followed Alex as she tried to basically go to hell and bring back Darlington, or Daniel Arlington, and kind of the journey of what happens. I think this one unfortunately wasn't super memorable, so I don't remember what happened at the end, but I rated this book 3 stars, and I think the series overall is okay. I don't think I will get the next book in the series. So I got Ninth House and Hellbent through Book of the Month. I actually unhauled Ninth House already, and I do plan on unhauling this one because I'm just not a fan of the series, and I don't see any point of keeping it around, especially if I'm not going to be rereading it at any point. So in the future, if there is another book in the series, which there likely will be, I'll probably just check it out from the library instead of wasting my money on something that I don't plan on keeping. The next book that I ended up reading was The Summer of Christmas by Juliet Giglio and Keith Giglio. I'm not sure if I'm saying their names right, but this was for my Instagram monthly challenge, where it's to read a Christmas themed or winter themed book in the month of July. So it's like Christmas in July, and I actually bought this off of PokemonGO from somebody. I was already buying something from their shop, and then I was just buying other books that looked interesting to me, impulse buying. And this one actually didn't have great reviews on Goodreads, but it wasn't that bad. I think it had below a 3 star. It was like a 2.99 or something on Goodreads. And I initially wanted to do a video where I was reading the worst rated books, and this happened to be one of the worst rated books on my Goodreads TBR. But I ended up giving this book a 3 star. It was okay, super cute. Contemporary romance that basically follows Ivy. She's like an actress, and she's forced to move back home, and basically ends up falling in love again with her high school sweetheart. So I want to say this is second chance romance, but it was just okay. So 3 stars for me. I am planning on unhauling this book as well. If I can't unhaul it on PokemonGO, I may end up just putting it in a little free library, and I'm sure I will film that at some point, but the Summer of Christmas. Then I read Bittersweet Addiction by QB Tyler, and this was the follow-up to Bittersweet Surrender by QB Tyler. And the first book essentially was following a married woman who was going to couples therapy with her husband, and she falls in love with a therapist. And the second book basically follows the aftermath of what happened from the first book, so I don't want to spoil anything. But this was another contemporary romance that there was just a lot of drama, a lot of back and forth of what would happen to Dr. Montgomery. Like, you know, does he lose his license, and what about the husband, and like, is he coming and threatening them? Like, lots of drama basically unraveled, and I found myself not wanting to pick up this book because it wasn't like super interesting like the first book. Like the first book I was like, holy crap, this is wild and racy, and I can't believe people would do this. But I mean, it happens. There are therapists who screw their clients. But yeah, it was okay. I rated it 3 stars. So far my month was kind of just like trudging along, nothing super special. Then I encountered Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan, and this book is so cute. I had no idea what it was about going in. Essentially, it's following Archer and Bree. And Archer Hale, there was something tragic that happened to him when he was younger. He ends up like not being able to speak or communicate very well, and he communicates via sign language. So Bree actually knows sign language, and she's able to communicate with him, and they become closer like that. I was not expecting the like ending piece, and I remember at some point like being on like live sprints reading this book, and I was just literally like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I initially rated it like a 5-star, but I think it's actually like a 4.75 for me. But it is a recommendation that I would have for you if you did not read it yet. I read Nightfall by L.H. Causeway, and this was like a free ebook that I got off of Amazon. From time to time, people will put the first book in their series up on Amazon for free for people to buy. That way, if you're interested in the book, you will be more likely to go on and read the next book in their series. But this book, I honestly don't remember too much about. I don't remember it being bad or anything. It is a paranormal / fantasy romance kind of thing. Has to do with like vampires and stuff. But I ended up reading it 3 stars. So if you're into like vampires and stuff, then that's certainly a recommendation I have for you. So it's just another take on a vampire romance kind of thing. But honestly, I don't remember too much about the book. I read this for Summerween as the prompt that was like read a book in the dark, and I thought that would be a nice book to pair with reading in the dark because Nightfall. So I was kind of like going with a theme here. The next book that I ended up reading was not really a book, it was actually a manga called Dr.B's Original Sin. And it says the author is Taizan 5, but my partner actually recommended it to me as something to read. It was kind of like a dark type of manga, but it was essentially about this little like thing that comes to Earth and tries to make everybody happy. And I will say there are some trigger warnings in this book, so it does deal with certain heavy topics. So I would suggest that you look up trigger warnings if you're interested in reading this manga. Overall, I rated the manga 3 stars. It's kind of weird to rate a manga. I enjoyed it, but I probably wouldn't pick it up to read again. And this was for my Summerween prompt of reading a graphic novel, manga, or novella, I believe. Then I read The Weight of Blood, and this is also in my video that is about my mid-year freakout tag or mid-year book tag, and I talked about this being one of the best books I've read this year. This is a YA horror by Tiffany D. Jackson, and I read this for the Summerween prompt of reading a book that had like a black or orange cover. So this one essentially follows a young teen girl who ends up, you find out that she's black and she's also white, I believe her mother's black and her father's white, but she is white appearing. So she has this thing with her hair that she can't get it wet because the other kids will find out that she is not white, and that might lead to some like negative consequences in the school. In this very like racist town, there is an element of like magic and witchery and stuff going on. It didn't really turn, to me, it didn't really turn into horror until like the last third of the book, where you start reading about some very gruesome things that happened. So if like gore and blood kind of like, and violence like disturbs you, like that's a trigger warning, I would definitely, you know, make sure you look that up. But I highly recommend The Weight of Blood. I initially again gave this book 5 stars, but then thinking back, I was like, I definitely think about it a lot, but it's not something I think about all the time, so it's probably like more of a 4.75 for me. I don't quite know like what knocks it down that 0.25, but regardless, The Weight of Blood is a book that you should read if you're into YA, if you're into horror, if you're into both. This is definitely a really good book. Next book I read was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and this is another contemporary romance. I remember this having some chronic illness rep, and it is, I think, set in England, if I'm not mistaken. Honestly, I found myself really bored with this book, and I don't exactly know what was so boring about it. Maybe it's because like I just didn't feel their chemistry. It wasn't like poorly written or anything. I gave it 3 stars. Like it was okay, but it wasn't maybe my cup of tea, and not something that I'm like interested in like continuing the series. So Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This is another book that I plan on unhauling. Then I listened to The Inmate by Frida McFadden, and that's a mystery thriller. I think I read this for the prompt for Summerween, which is to read a mystery or thriller, and I thought this was interesting. The twist was kind of like not totally unexpected, but it was just alright. Our buddy read this, and me and my buddy kind of felt the same about it. Like it wasn't, you know, the best mystery thriller in the world. There wasn't like a crazy plot twist or anything like that. So overall, ended up rating it 3 stars. But nonetheless, it was still like a decent mystery thriller to get into, like very quick to read if you're kind of looking for something not too, you know, crazy or thrilling or anything like that. Then I read The Kiskers by Erin Sterling. This is the second book after The Ex-Hex. Follows Gwen, who is the cousin of Vivi from the first book, and I read this for the Summerween prompt of reading a book that takes place in the fall. It was safe to assume that this took place in the fall, given that it's like about witches and stuff like that. But it was a cute book, you know, very kind of cozy. I ended up giving 3 stars, so, you know, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that I will most likely remember forever. But definitely something maybe to keep on your radar for spooky Halloween themed reads coming up this fall. I plan on unhauling this one as well as the first book, so both of these books will be on my PokemonGO soon. Right, next up I read There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. I also read There Is No Devil by Sophie Lark right after this. They're both dark romances. I enjoyed this one. I gave it a solid 4 star. I think the next one I also gave a 4 star as well. However, I thought that honestly they could have been combined into one book, because if I recall correctly, the second book talks a lot more in depth about like the backstory, and I was like, oh, this could have been great to have in the first book. But regardless, I thought both books were pretty good. If you're into dark romance, I would suggest this. It's not anything like super dark, like you're not getting your whips and chains and things like that, but there is some elements of like stalking and things like that, and murder kinds of stuff, but very interesting to read. If I had to describe that series in like a couple of words, I probably would say like serial killer artist. I read She Started It by Sean Gilbert, and I actually enjoyed this one. I did rate it 3 stars, but I thought it was fun and interesting. The plot twist at the end wasn't like fantastical or anything, but it was fun and enjoyable to read. If I had to sum this up, I would be like rich people's drama surrounding a wedding, but it is a mystery thriller, and you're essentially trying to figure out what happened to these childhood friends, and essentially like why all of a sudden they're getting invited to this wedding of this girl that they haven't talked to since grade school. But overall, it was a fun mystery thriller read. Again, super kind of like simple, like The Inmate. Nothing like dramatic, well, nothing like that's gonna change your life or anything, but it was a fun read, and I absolutely love this cover. It's funny because I probably wouldn't reread this again. Not that I wouldn't reread it, but I absolutely love the cover, and this is a Book of the Month version from the June 2023 box. I also read The Love Wager by Lynn Painter, and this one was cute. I rated this one 4 stars. It is about 2 people who make a wager or a bet on who can find love first, and as you can guess, they end up falling in love with each other after many failed dates. But I thought this one was super duper cute. I loved Jack, and I loved how into Hallie he was. Definitely recommend reading this one by Lynn Painter. I believe this one was her first new adult book. I know she's got a lot of other YA books, but definitely recommend The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. Another book that popped up in my mid-year book tag was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I loved this book as well. I gave it 4 stars. It's following 2 people, Olive and Ethan. They attend Olive's sister's wedding and happen to be the only 2 people that don't eat this like hors d'oeuvre or something that ended up poisoning everybody at the wedding, like food poisoning. And because her twin sister can't go on this honeymoon adventure anymore, she decides to have Olive go. I believe Ethan's a twin as well, so that's how they end up going to this honeymoon trip and being able to pass as the 2 people who were supposed to go, because they technically weren't allowed to change the reservation of the names that were initially going on the trip. But overall, it was a fun, cute read, enemies to lovers type of vibes, and you guys know me, I love enemies to lovers. Definitely another book that I recommend, especially if you're a Christina Lauren fan. Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune is one of the next books that I read, and I absolutely love the colors on this cover. I'm definitely really a fan of the purple and the pinks and everything. But this one is another book that I rated 4 stars. I enjoyed reading about Fern and Will. What happened was, like, I think something happened 9 years ago or something like that, where Will was supposed to show up and never did. And so like Will and Fern haven't seen each other in this time period. And then basically they get back together. So it's kind of like a second chance romance, if I'm not mistaken. But it was really cute seeing how the couple came together and like they talked about what happened. But overall, this was an enjoyable read. I have our other book, Every Summer After, that I plan on reading at some point soon before the summer ends. Probably will take it like on a beach trip at the end of September. But yeah, I'm definitely planning on keeping this, especially for the cover as well. I really love these 2 covers together. Super cute vibes. Okay, we're getting to the end of my list here of physical books. But I also read the 3rd book in the Folk of the Air series called The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, and this one essentially is the like end of the trilogy here. It is a YA fantasy. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars as well. So I had a like kind of meh reading month at the beginning, and then it started getting really good, and finally ended very well. But this one was a good end to the series. I think it was the best one in the series in my opinion, but ultimately lots of drama going on about like getting back the crown and the throne, and like what happens with all the politics of Fairy and if Jude becomes the queen and what happens to Carden and all that So definitely a series I recommend. I think overall I'd probably rate the series like 3 to 3.5 stars. But again, it is a YA fantasy, so I'm not like super into YA, but I read it because it was recommended to me. Okay, and then I also read Ali Hazelwood's newest book, Love Theoretically. I remember purchasing this at a local bookstore and saw it on the shelves, and I was like, I have to have this because I like Ali Hazelwood's writing. A lot of people don't like her because she'll say stuff like, there's this teeny tiny woman and then this ginormous man who Sarah from Sarah Shells would say he's built like a fridge. And she's gonna kill me when she hears that, but yeah, so this one follows Elise Hanaway and Jack Smith, who there's like this whole thing where Elise has this side gig of like essentially like being an escort, and she's an escort with Jack's brother. She's going up for this job at a university, and essentially like it's kind of like enemies to lovers, and there's a lot of helping Jack understand that like, no, I'm not actually dating your brother, and like I'm not wronging him because that's what he thinks. He thinks like she's cheating on his brother and all this stuff. So it's kind of like a wild ride, but I thoroughly enjoy Ali Hazelwood's writing because of she's writing a lot about women in STEM. So this one is definitely one that a lot of people enjoy. I gave it 4 stars. I think so far I've read Love on the Brain and Love Theoretically, and I do have The Love Hypothesis coming up. Actually, in the next like couple of weeks or so, I'm going to be reading that book along with the novellas that she has. I have the book Loath to Love You that combines all 3 of them that I checked out from the library, and yeah, I'm excited to read more Ali Hazelwood. One of the next books that I read was Court of Nightmares, also part of Amanda and Sarah's book that they picked. I don't know if it was necessarily part of Sugar and Spice, but it was very interesting. It was a paranormal romance between vampires, and it was a reverse harem where there was 1 woman and 7 males. So all of them were vampires, and basically there's a lot of smut in this book. So if you're into super smut, this is the book for you. Like every freaking chapter is filled with smut for each of the guys, and it was just like not disinteresting, but it felt like there's only so many ways that you can say like, oh, I've licked this person up and down, and you know, honestly, like if that's your thing, cool. But for me, I was kind of bored of that. I was like, I just want some more substance in this book. But it did get into in-depth more into like backstory of some of the people, and I think I saw that K.A. Knight has the next book, I think it's called Court of Death, coming out at some point. I saw the fan art for it, and it's super sexy. But I ended up giving Court of Nightmares 3 stars. The last book that we need to talk about is Divine Rivals, and I am supposed to be getting the Fairy Loot special edition some point this week, and I'll pop a little insert of me getting it, opening it, and like being excited about it because I'm obsessed with this book. It's here. I'm so excited. Let me show you what I got. So this is not from Fairy Loot specifically, like not directly from Fairy Loot. I got this off of somebody on PokemonGO. Okay, so now I'm just using the box as a little stand. So this is cute. There's a little baggie that says Happy Reading, and on the other side there's a little Fairy Loot logo. But let's see what it is. I'd be so careful. Are you guys ready for this? I got it. I paid entirely way too much for this book. Look how beautiful this book is. Oh my goodness, and look at this cover. So pretty. The back. Oh, it's fresh. It's fresh, guys. Hasn't even been cracked here yet. Oh my goodness. So beautiful. This is probably one of my 6-star reads, but I did rate this 5 stars because there's only a 5-point scale. But Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross is a fantasy romance slash historical fiction. It's between these two writers who have these like magical typewriters, and they connect, and the main character of the book, Iris, is trying to figure out what happened to her brother. So she becomes like a war correspondent, and there's like this war between gods going on. You go through the story trying to find out like, you know, what happens to Iris's brother, Forrest, and also the developing relationship. Super amazing book. If you haven't read this one and Fourth Wing, highly recommend. So now that I think about it with my mid-year wrap-up, like obviously I recommend Fourth Wing and I'm excited for Iron Flame. Definitely recommend Divine Rivals, and I'm so excited for Ruthless Vows. That's coming out, I think December 26th is the date. So November and December are going to be very fun months for me. Thanks guys for watching my video. I hope that you enjoyed my July wrap-up. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions for future videos. If you made it this far in the video, go ahead and drop a star or some sparkles, because we are all stars. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!